A real pleasure to have received the call from your office today, Premier, to say you'd like to do the proclamation virtually. And thank you very much as well, Minister Davis, for the role that you've played with Volunteer Week for so many years. Welcome to you, Melissa, as one of our honorary co-chairs. We're disappointed that our second co-chair, Greg Smith, can't be with us, but Greg is on the air. And there are certain things, Premier, that take precedence. In any event, it's a real pleasure to do this proclamation for Volunteer Week 2020. It is, of course, a wonderful time every year when we have the opportunity to acknowledge, to recognize, and to thank all of the people in our province who do so much to support our communities, to support our residents, and to make this a better place to live. And I think we're all at a point now where, you know, we say we're living in challenging times, but one of the things that I find really heartening is that there are so many people who are still so eager to find a way to step up and to do things differently. One of the things that we're finding here, because of the demographics, obviously, of a lot of our volunteers in the province, is that we're seeing a surge in younger volunteers. People who are stepping up who may not have stepped up before because they're filling the void in food banks and deliveries and so on that seniors are more reluctant and are in fact being asked not to do. So this is a wonderful way to start our proclamation. And I'd just like to make another couple of comments about the importance of volunteers and the importance of Volunteer Week and the importance of messages from people such as yourselves, because people really like to be honored, they like to be thanked, they like to be recognized, even though that's not the reason why people do volunteer. But it is wonderful that we have managed to do this proclamation in this way. And I think that I'd just like to recognize our provincial government and our medical professionals and our healthcare professionals who have been so strong and so good. And I expect a lot of what they do is probably on a voluntary basis, to thank them for what they do. But heeding their advice, it's important that we all stay in our bubble. That's a real big challenge for volunteers because they really want to be out in everybody's face. They want to be doing what they're doing. But organizations and volunteers are really working hard to heed the advice that we're being given and to play the leadership role that we're so accustomed to seeing our volunteers play. So Melissa, I'd like to ask you now if you'd like to make a few remarks as our honorary co-chair, and then we'll move to you, Premier.
Sure, thank you, Penny. Just to echo your remarks, certainly I was excited to be named as one of the honorary co-chairs of Volunteer Week this year. Certainly this week has unfolded a little differently than we thought Volunteer Week might, but we're so, speaking for Greg and I, Greg Smith and I, we're so encouraged by the outpouring of support and thanks and recognition for volunteers, even while people are certainly preoccupied by the situation we find ourselves in. And, you know, again, as was just mentioned, you know, there's no greater time than challenging times to really see the effect that volunteers have on our community, both because of the way people are stepping up related to the pandemic, but also I think we're seeing a lot of gaps where people, you know, typically are able to volunteer in the community and are prevented from doing that right now, understandably. But so I think we're, in some ways, when it stops or it's paused or done differently, you really see the effect that volunteers bring to our community all year round. So it's not just about volunteers in this situation, but you know, the benefits they bring to our community 12 months of the year. So, you know, the Community Sector Council and our Volunteer Week Committee has had to do things differently, just like the provincial government has certainly had to do things differently over the past little while. So we thank you very much for agreeing to do this proclamation digitally. I think it's very exciting, and really thank you for all the support for volunteers this week.
So Bernie, do you want a word or two before we...
Absolutely, Premier. Thank you very much. I'm so happy that we got the opportunity to do that. I was wondering how we were going to do it, and thank you to the Premier for doing this digital format for us. As the Minister responsible for Industry and Technology, I think it's great that we're using technology for this, and there's no better use of technology than for the volunteer sector that does such fantastic work in our community, right from every coast to coast, and I'm very happy that I've been involved with the Community Sector Council for a number of years now with Volunteer Week, and you know, the passion, action, and impact that volunteers make right across our province. You don't have to look very far into what we're dealing with the pandemic, or whether it's artists out performing to make the stays in your home while you're isolating a little bit more enjoyable. So just a big thank you to the great work that CSC does, and to the volunteer chairs, Greg and Melissa. I know you very well, both of you. You're going to do a fantastic job, and it's unfortunate that we're dealing with it this way, but I think it gives us an opportunity as well to do things a little differently. And I'll turn it over to the Premier because I'm glad that we had the opportunity to sign this proclamation in this way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, thanks everyone, and to, you know, to Penny and to Melissa and to Greg, of course, for, you know, doing what you always do. You do it in just you know, just a respectful, professional manner all the time. I'm going to take a little different, I guess, approach to all of this, because I got to tell you, I'm coming with almost like mixed emotions to the way we're actually doing this, even though this is unique, and we've been able to adjust doing this virtually on many of the meetings and many of the things that we're doing now as we deal with this pandemic. But I always look forward to meeting people face to face and just basically shaking their hands and just looking at them and saying, you know, thank you for the work that you do. It's never lost on me that the large volume of people in every single community, people of all ages, and I think your proclamation, you know, talks about people 15 years of age and over. Some 46% of our population that find a way to volunteer. They really don't do it as a just, you know, what I look at all the time, because I spent quite a bit of time doing this, is the rewards of being a volunteer. You know, that comes back and in spades in many cases. You just feel better about your own mental health and physical health simply because you're out there helping one another. And we're seeing this, you know, through this year. I keep saying that in Newfoundland and Labrador, if we could take a mulligan on 2020, we would do it, start it all over again, but we don't have that option. Starting with the you know, the weather event that we had in the Snowmageddon, and our volunteers stepped up then, and actually I thought we were some of the greatest ambassadors for Newfoundland and Labrador to the country, because everybody was watching what we were doing, and just some of the scenes and the things that people were doing was just, you just spoke to who we are as a people. And here we are now finding ourselves in this, you know, this recent pandemic, not alone, but, you know, with the rest of the country and the world. And once again, we have a large group of volunteers who are finding ways, things that they never even anticipated. And we're seeing, as Penny said, from some of the very youngest in our society to still some of the oldest. I saw an example the other day of a woman, and that I know because I've read the story. I know the work that, you know, she is doing. Over 90 years old, and finding a way to be participating in some food distribution within the province. So, you know, Penny, when you say people are of all ages, you know, you're absolutely right. And I can just, you know, just for a few minutes or a second or so, think back on my own life. And there's one of the things I remember when the Salvation Army reached out to me one time to chair a Red Shield campaign. And first of all, I was surprised to get the call, but yet I was really honored when I've been able to go through it, because you learn a lot about the different organizations and people that you represent, you know, with the Community Sector Council. And so for all of us, we get better informed, and there's certainly a good feeling when you were able to give back to your community. So congratulations. You know, this is a big week for you guys. I know you're in every single community. Just keep up the good work. And, you know, as Premier of the province, I can tell you, I'm really thrilled. And I know you, Bernie, you've been always a big advocate, you know, for volunteerism. And it was, Penny, I don't know if I have ever told you this, but it was actually when you and I were chatting about how would this fit into our way forward plan. And it was just after that Bernie approached me as well on the very same thing. And we were very proud to be able to work with you and get that plan in place. So just keep up the good work. We've got lots to celebrate, lots of great people to recognize. So it's a privilege for me to be able to, you know, sign this proclamation on behalf of the provincial government today.
Premier, we appreciate your remarks, but it does cause me to tell you a little story. Since you said you remember when you were asked to step up to chair the Red Shield campaign, my earliest recollection as a child was sitting in the sitting room in my family home with my mother, who had a bunch of soup bowls laid out. And my job was to take the nickels and the pennies and the dimes and the quarters and put them in each one of those soup bowls from the Red Shield campaign that she was chairing here in St. John's. So we have that in common as well.
Well, appreciate it. Good stories, lots of good examples of, you know, what's happening around the province. Well, I guess are we ready to put some ink on this proclamation?
We are.
Okay. Do you mind holding it up?
That's looking good, Premier.
There we go.
Mine is just about to arrive. We were so busy getting one to you.
That's good.
So, and on behalf of the Community Sector Council and the Volunteer Week Committee and our co-chairs, here's our signed document proclaiming Volunteer Week 2020. Applauding the volunteers.
And for once, I don't have to sign it or notarize it or anything.
No, well, no, you'll just watch it all unfold.
And you can't even send a bill.
I guess, Bernie, if we're supposed to applaud, we should applaud for great reasons, so why not?
So thank you all
For volunteers.
thank you all for arranging this and for the proclamation, and we look forward to sharing this document with our colleagues in the sector through all kinds of different means over the next few days.
Perfect.
Yes, thank you, Premier. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say thank you, Premier, and thank you, Minister Davis, for your support for Volunteer Week and for your support for the community sector through this. So thank you very much.